Why did the school nurse file a report when I needed my insulin pump during class? The school nurse pulled the insulin pump out of my backpack. Her hands froze when she saw the settings screen. Her face went from concerned to confused to something harder that I couldn't read. She asked me when I'd last changed my basal rate. I told her my stepmom adjusted it this morning, like she always did. Nurse Kimberly Strand, who'd been managing diabetic students at Riverside High for 14 years, looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. "We need to call your endocrinologist right now." My blood sugar was at 380, climbing despite the insulin I'd been taking all week. I felt like I was moving through syrup. She left me sitting in her office, made a phone call I wasn't supposed to hear, using words like dangerous settings and possible Munchausen by proxy. Then, immediate intervention required. 20 minutes later, a CPS investigator arrived. I've been living with type 1 diabetes for 6 years, since I was 11. The diagnosis came after 2 weeks of constant thirst, exhaustion, losing 15 pounds despite eating constantly. My mom took me to our pediatrician, who ran blood tests that showed my glucose at 620. He sent us straight to the emergency room. They stabilized my blood sugar, started me on insulin injections, explained that my pancreas had stopped producing insulin. My immune system had attacked the insulin-producing cells. Now I'd need synthetic insulin for the rest of my life to survive. My mom learned everything about diabetes management. She attended classes at the hospital, joined online support groups, tracked my blood sugar meticulously. She learned to count carbohydrates, calculate insulin ratios, recognize signs of both high and low blood sugar. She set alarms to check my levels at 2 a.m. for 3 years. We managed my diabetes together. Then mom died in a car accident when I was 14. She was driving home from work on a rainy evening. A semi-truck lost control, crossed the median. She died instantly. My world shattered. My father was destroyed by grief. Barely functional for months. I was numb, going through motions of school and diabetes management, because mom had trained me so thoroughly. The routines were mechanical. 6 months after mom died, dad started dating again. He met Valerie Hawthorne at a grief support group, a widow whose husband had died from cancer. She seemed nice at first, sympathetic, understanding, patient with my grief. She was a pharmaceutical sales representative, which she mentioned often, as if it gave her medical credibility. Dad married her 8 months after mom's death. Valerie moved into our house with her efficient smile, her insistence on helping with my diabetes management. At first, her involvement seemed helpful. She'd ask about my blood sugar readings, remind me to check before meals, offer to help count carbohydrates. She told dad she had medical knowledge through her pharmaceutical work. Could take some of the burden off him. Dad was grateful. Managing my diabetes had overwhelmed him since mom died. He didn't understand the calculations and ratios, felt anxious about making mistakes. Valerie's offer to take over seemed like a relief. I didn't love having her involved, but I told myself it was temporary. The first change Valerie made was switching me to an insulin pump. I'd been using multiple daily injections since diagnosis, a method that worked fine. Valerie convinced dad that a pump would be better, more convenient, more precise. The pump itself was actually great initially. It delivered tiny amounts of insulin continuously, the basal rate plus larger boluses before meals. I could adjust settings myself, but Valerie insisted on reviewing all my changes to make sure I was doing it correctly. She'd ask to see my pump settings every evening, checking my basal rates. If I'd adjusted anything, she'd question why. Her tone was always concerned, never accusatory, but the constant oversight made me feel incompetent. Within 2 months of getting the pump, I started feeling off. My blood sugar was running higher than it should, consistently between 250 and 350, instead of the target range of 80 to 180. I checked my settings and they looked correct, but somehow I wasn't getting good control. I told Valerie something seemed wrong. She immediately took over my pump programming, saying she'd optimize the settings, since I clearly wasn't managing well. She spent an evening researching, adjusting my basal rates, explaining she was using her pharmaceutical knowledge. I let her because she seemed confident, and I felt increasingly foggy, tired. But my blood sugar didn't improve. It got worse. I was constantly thirsty, exhausted, struggling to focus in school. I'd wake up with readings in the 400s, despite the insulin pump supposedly delivering insulin all night. Valerie would look concerned, adjust my settings again. She started preparing all my meals, counting carbohydrates for me, saying I must be calculating wrong. She'd program my mealtime boluses directly into my pump, not trusting me to do it myself. My junior year started in August. I was struggling academically for the first time. My concentration was shot, sitting in class, feeling like I was underwater, watching teachers' mouths move, not processing their words. My hands shook constantly. I was always thirsty, drinking bottles of water that never satisfied. I'd get up to use the bathroom multiple times per class, teachers giving me increasingly annoyed looks. My soccer coach benched me, my endurance completely gone. Friends asked if I was okay. I'd say my diabetes was just being difficult. Dad noticed I looked unwell, but Valerie always had explanations ready. Teenage growth spurts affected insulin needs. Stress from school was spiking my blood sugar. I wasn't following the meal plans she created. That's when the school nurse saw what Valerie had been doing to my settings. Full story is linked below or on my channel.